No one living on the Isles of Scilly knew they were at war. The sun was shining that morning when Anna Trevelyan, the island's young historian, stepped into the tiny archives room behind the old church. She was looking for records about ancient shipwrecks, but what she found was far stranger. A dusty document dated in the 1600s. The title caught her eye. Declaration of War by the Dutch States General against the Isles of Scilly. She froze. The Dutch declared war on us. It made no sense. The Isles of Scilly were peaceful, a quiet British territory, known more for puffins and fishing boats than warfare. She looked closer. The document was signed, sealed, and dated 1651. There were no signs of it ever being revoked. Her heart beat faster. Had no one ever called off the war? She made copies and rushed to the only man on the island who might know anything, George Jenkins, 84 years old, and considered the island's living memory. He chuckled when he saw her. "Ah, the Dutch War. I heard about it when I was a boy. Thought it was just a joke." "It doesn't look like a joke," Anna said, handing him the document. George's eyes narrowed. He grew serious. "Well then, I suppose it wasn't a joke after all. It all started during the English Civil War. Back then, the Royalists had control over the Isles of Scilly, using them as a base for pirate raids against Dutch shipping. The Netherlands, a rising naval power and ally of Parliament, grew angry. In 1651, they sent Admiral Martin Tromp to demand compensation. When it was denied, he declared war on the Isles of Scilly, but nothing happened. No ships fired. No battles followed. The war became a legal footnote and was forgotten. Except no treaty was ever signed. No one formally ended it. The war simply sat there, quietly ticking across centuries. A war without bullets. A war without death. A war, officially, still on the books. Anna couldn't believe it. She contacted Dutch historians. They were equally surprised, but when they searched their national archives, they found it too. The declaration was real. Over 300 years had passed. Monarchs died. Empires rose and fell. The world changed. Yet technically, these two places were still at war. Word spread like wildfire. Reporters came. Journalists flew in. Headlines around the world screamed, "The longest war in history may still be ongoing." A delegation was formed. Dutch officials agreed to meet on Scilly soil. Cameras rolled as they gathered in the island's town hall, where a formal peace treaty was signed in 1986, ending a war that had lasted 335 years, yet spilled not a single drop of blood. But that was the official story. What Anna didn't expect, what no one expected, was that the more she investigated, the more strange things she uncovered. There were old letters in the archive that spoke of a secret Dutch ship sent after the declaration. A journal from a sailor hinted that the ship never returned. Locals whispered about a wreck off the coast that no one had ever been able to find. And then there was the map, hand-drawn, faded ink, found inside a hollow section of the church's altar days after the treaty was signed. It showed the island, but marked in red, off the western coast, was a name no modern records mentioned, Dutchman's Rest. Anna's hands trembled as she traced the shoreline. If the Dutch ship did come, what happened to it? And why had the story of this war been so perfectly, so cleanly forgotten? Until now. Anna couldn't sleep that night. The name, Dutchman's Rest, kept echoing in her mind like the waves outside her window. She spread the map out on her kitchen table, running her fingers over the rough edge where the parchment had clearly been torn from a larger document. She knew every rock and cove on the Isles of Scilly, at least she thought she did. But this location, it was marked just offshore, in a stretch of deep water locals called the Blue Hollow. No boats fished there. No swimmers went there. The water was too dark, too deep, and the currents too unpredictable. It was also, curiously, the place where every compass seemed to spin slightly off. The next morning, before dawn, Anna rode out with nothing but the map, a thermos of coffee, and her binoculars. The sky was pale gray. Gulls cried above her. The waves were gentle at first, but the moment she passed into the blue hollow, the boat began to sway with more aggression. It wasn't a storm. It was just wrong. The water churned as if something beneath it had its own breath. Anna anchored near the red-marked spot and looked over the side. There was nothing to see. She tried her binoculars. Still nothing. But when she dropped the waterproof sonar reader she'd borrowed from the local marine lab, the small screen buzzed and whined, showing strange, uneven lines. Something massive and unnatural sat at the bottom. She hit save on the scan and rowed back fast. Later that week, Anna convinced a diver named Luca to join her. He was skeptical, but agreed after seeing the sonar. They dove early on a Tuesday. The water was cold and dim. At 15 meters down, Luca pointed to something through the murk. A glint, a curve, then more cannons. Wood, iron. It was a shipwreck, but not just any wreck. The design was clearly 17th century. Dutch-style hull. The beams still strangely intact, preserved by the cold. Luca surfaced first, pulling off his mask. "It's real," he gasped. "It's a warship, and it's been down there for centuries." Anna surfaced beside him, eyes wide. "But why hasn't anyone found it before?" "Because," he said, pointing to the sky, "you'd never find it unless you knew where to look. That map, it's the only copy. The news should have gone public." But Anna didn't report it. Not yet. Something about the discovery felt unfinished. There was no logbook recovered. No personal items. Just the bones of a warship. No evidence of a crew. Until she went back alone. She dove at dusk, foolishly. The sea was angry that day, but she had to go. Something called her. And this time, she found something different. Inside a torn corner of the ship's collapsed deck was a small brass box. Heavy, sealed shut. She brought it to the surface and took it home. Her hands trembled as she cracked it open. Inside, a journal, a rusted pocket watch, and a ring with an odd crest, half lion, half serpent. The journal's pages were damp, but readable. It was in Dutch, but Anna, trained in historical languages, could make it out. It began, "We were never meant to return. They said we'd find only fishermen, but we were not told of the black signal. We saw it 3 days out. Red smoke on the water." Anna dropped the book. The story of the bloodless war, the war with no shots fired, was falling apart. Someone had come, and someone, or something, had made sure they never left. And there was still one question no one dared to ask. What really happened in the Blue Hollow in 1651? Anna didn't sleep again that night. The words haunted her. "We saw it 3 days out. Red smoke on the water." She stared at the journal spread open on her desk, the salt-stained pages crackling under the desk lamp. She had translated only a few entries, but already it felt less like a sailor's log and more like a confession, a record of fear, regret, something unnatural. The following entry chilled her. "The men grow restless. We are anchored outside their island, but no one comes. The water has turned thick. Even the gulls do not cry. We fired no shots. We only watched. And then the tide bled." Anna closed the journal. It made no sense. What tide bled? No official history mentioned anything about a Dutch crew reaching Scilly, much less dying there. So why had this ship sunk? Why was there no record, no battle, no survivors, no sign of distress sent home? She needed answers. The next day, she took the journal and rang to Dr. Robert Lennox, a Dutch maritime historian at a university in Exeter. He was tall, graying, and slightly eccentric, known for chasing ghost stories in naval history. When Anna laid the journal before him, his face darkened with every page. He said one word. Orange Nacht. What's that mean? She asked. The Orange Night. It was a rumor, he said, fingers on the ring. Sailors whispered about it in the late 17th century. A Dutch fleet that vanished while pursuing enemies off the British coast. They said the sea glowed red one night, like fire under the waves, and that every man aboard was lost. No bodies, no flotsam. Just gone. He tapped the crest on the ring. This emblem, half lion, half serpent, was used by a secret division of the Dutch Navy. Not many know it existed. They weren't just soldiers. They were sent to track unnatural events during times of war. Anna's eyes widened. You're saying they weren't here just to fight? That they were looking for something? Lennox nodded slowly. Or maybe running from something. If that ship sank here, there's more below the water than we realize. He closed the journal and handed it back. Be careful, Anna. Some stories want to stay buried. But she couldn't let it go. The next week, Anna returned to the dive site with Luca. She hadn't told him everything, only that she wanted to explore the ship further. They reached the Blue Hollow at dawn. The sky was gray again, as if the weather knew. They went down. This time, Anna entered the lower hull, where the beams had collapsed inward. It was darker, colder. She spotted something wedged behind a cannon. A skeletal hand, still clutching a rusted dagger. But the odd part wasn't the bones. It was the symbol scratched into the wall beside it. A spiral inside a sun. Anna blinked. She had seen that same spiral once before, on a stone buried behind the church, near the altar where the map had been hidden. She thought it was just decoration. Now it felt like a warning. Suddenly, Luca tapped her arm. His eyes were wide behind the mask. He pointed out the ship's shattered side. Movement. Anna turned and froze. Something was shifting in the distant murk. Not a fish. Not wreckage. Something larger. Slow. Silent. A shadow. The water around them seemed to darken. Not because of depth, but like ink spreading through the sea. And then they both heard it. Not with ears, but inside their heads. A low hum, like chanting. Anna's chest tightened. She reached for Luca, gesturing upward. They swam. Fast. They burst to the surface gasping, clutching the side of the boat, hearts pounding. What was that? Luca said, voice shaking. Anna didn't answer. She couldn't, because the moment they climbed back into the boat, she saw something strange. On the inside of the hull, scratched into the wet wood, where it hadn't been before, was the spiral sun. Fresh. And below it, written in dripping black, the war is not over. The engine on the boat wouldn't start. Luca pulled the cord again and again, but it just coughed, then died. Anna sat frozen, staring at the message etched inside the hull. The war is not over. The spiral sun stared back at her like an eye. It wasn't there when they left. It wasn't there when they dove. And yet now, in wet black lines that hadn't even dried, it was scrawled like a threat. Maybe it's seaweed, Luca muttered, trying to convince himself. It's not, Anna said flatly. They had to row back. It took an hour through choppy waters, and neither spoke. Not until the island came into view. And even then it looked different. The sky overhead had darkened despite the morning hour. The wind had changed. It wasn't cold, but heavy, like the air was thick with watching. Back on shore, they tied up the boat, and Anna wrapped the journal and the brass ring in cloth and stuffed them into her bag. They walked back in silence. As they passed the small Anglican church, where Anna had found the map, they saw a figure waiting by the gate. It was George Jenkins, the old island man who'd first told Anna about the joke war. He was pale, shaking. His hands clutched an old envelope. I was hoping I'd catch you, he said in a low voice. I remembered something. Something I never told anyone. He handed her the envelope. It was yellowed and sealed with a black wax stamp, the same spiral sun. My grandfather gave me this before he died, George said, voice shaking. Told me not to open it until the day the second wave came. I never knew what he meant, but last night I had the dream again. The Red Sea, the black sun, the chanting. Anna took the envelope slowly. George, your grandfather, was he part of something? George gave her a long, haunted look. We don't talk about it, but the Jenkins men, we've always been watchers. That wreck? My grandfather told me it's only one of 3. The others never reached land, but they weren't sunk. They disappeared, swallowed by something that didn't want to be seen. That's why the war stayed bloodless. Because the ones who knew the truth were too afraid to speak. Anna opened the envelope. Inside, a brittle piece of parchment, wrapped around a small iron key. The note read, "If you found this, it's begun again. The hollow will call. Do not follow the voices below. They lie. The vault is under the chapel. Use the key, but do not go alone. T. Jenkins, 1892. The vault." Anna whispered. George nodded slowly. It's real. Beneath the church. No one's opened it since before I was born. My grandfather swore it was built before the first stones of the church were ever laid. Anna turned to the chapel. It loomed quiet in the fog. She didn't want to go, but she knew she had to. That night, after the island had gone to sleep, Anna returned. This time with a torch, the key, and a heart full of dread. She walked past the pews, past the altar, and to the back wall where an ancient wooden hatch lay hidden behind the old organ. She inserted the key. It turned with a reluctant click. The hatch creaked open, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into blackness. The air smelled of salt and ash. She descended. The stone walls were slick with moss, and the sound of dripping echoed like footsteps. At the bottom, she found a door of iron and oak. Carved into it, the same spiral sun. Below that, more words, barely readable. Here ends the silence. She opened it. Inside was not a room. It was a chamber. Circular. Walls lined with bones. Not human. Long, thin, twisted. At the center, a pedestal. And resting on it, a second ring, identical to the first. Except this one was broken. Split clean in half. Anna stepped forward, heart hammering, when suddenly she heard it again. That low hum. The chanting. But this time, it wasn't in her head. It was real, echoing from the darkness. Growing louder. And just behind her, back at the top of the stairs, something closed the hatch. Anna spun around. The iron door she'd come through slammed shut with a force that shook the chamber. Her torchlight flickered. The air thickened. The chanting deepened. Not words, just tones, long and drawn out, like voices humming from deep underwater. She backed toward the pedestal. The broken ring sat there, untouched by time, as if it had just been placed. She felt a tug in her chest, a strange heaviness, like her own breath was slowing. Her ears popped, her vision pulsed. And then, from the shadows beyond the bones, something moved. Not fast, not directly, but with intent. Anna reached for the ring. The moment her fingers touched it, the humming stopped. Silence, total and terrifying. Then a whisper, clear and close, right at her ear. You brought it back. She turned. No one. But something had changed in the room. The walls weren't stone anymore. They were shifting. Wet. Breathing. The bones were gone. In their place were rows of shelves. Hundreds of small brass boxes, just like the one she had found in the wreck. Some were open. Some were sealed. Each with a number. A symbol. A warning. Anna stepped forward, trembling, and opened one at random. Inside was a lock of red hair, preserved like it had just been cut. In the next, a black coin, smooth and featureless, unnaturally cold. She realized these were offerings, relics, sacrifices. Every sailor who had disappeared had left something behind. And then her light caught a box in the far corner. It was different, larger, locked with 3 rings, one missing, one broken, and the third gone. Her 2 rings, one from the sunken ship, one from this vault, fit the molds exactly. But something told her, deep, instinctual, not to complete the set. That was when the door behind her groaned open, not by her hand, but something else. From the darkness beyond, the spiral symbol glowed faintly, pulsing with light. A voice called again. Only this time, it sounded familiar. Female. Anna, help me. Her blood froze. That voice, she knew it. It was her mother's. But Anna's mother had died when she was 8, drowned, in the same sea, near the Blue Hollow. She backed away, shaking her head. Anna, please come closer. It was soft, fragile, the exact voice she remembered from bedtime lullabies. The pull was unbearable. Her feet began to move, against her will, toward the light. And then, her phone buzzed. A single message on the cracked screen from an unknown number. Do not trust the voices. Break the rings. Bury the journal. The torchlight flickered again. The spiral sun grew brighter. Anna stood frozen between the vault door and the pedestal, between the past and something far older than war. She had uncovered a secret that had been locked away not just by time, but by fear. A war no one remembered, because no one dared speak of what had truly been fought, not with weapons, but with silence. And now the silence was ending. Anna's hands trembled as she clutched the broken ring. Do not trust the voices. Break the rings. Bury the journal. Her eyes flicked back to the brass box. Its 3 ring-shaped locks, now glowing faintly, almost as if they were alive. The 2 rings in her possession, one pulled from the sunken wreck, the other found in this underground vault, were clearly meant to complete something. Something ancient. Something designed to stay sealed. And yet, her mother's voice still called from beyond the doorway. Anna, you're so close. It was warm, kind, and full of sorrow. A voice that once soothed her nightmares, now rising from the darkness like a temptation. Anna gritted her teeth. She pressed the broken ring to the edge of the pedestal. It cracked further. A splinter of rusted metal fell to the floor. It was fragile, old, but full of power. Whatever force held these objects together, it wanted them whole. And she wasn't going to let that happen. She took a deep breath, raised the torch high, then smashed the broken ring against the stone base. A high-pitched scream burst from the pedestal. Not from a person, but from the vault itself. The air shook. The stone cracked. The spiral sun markings flared white-hot across the walls. Then dimmed. The brass box shuddered, and the voice changed. Anea. No longer kind. No longer motherly. Now it dragged her name out like a hiss. Sharp, ancient, furious. The glow in the hallway flickered. The figure in the doorway shifted. She wasn't seeing her mother anymore. A tall, shadowed thing stood there, vaguely human, but stretched wrong. Too thin, too long, eyes glowing faintly like coals. Its fingers brushed the top of the stone arch as it stepped forward. Anna didn't wait. She snatched the journal, turned, and ran. Up the narrow stairwell, 2 steps at a time. The air behind her pulsed with pressure, like something crawling up the walls after her. The whispers were louder now, not one voice, but many, in languages she couldn't understand. She burst through the hatch, slamming it shut behind her. The church was empty, cold, still, but different. Candles had been lit, 12 of them, perfectly spaced along the aisles. But no one was there. Anna didn't look back. She ran straight out of the church, across the wet grass, straight to the shoreline where Luca's small cottage stood. She banged on the door. He opened it, eyes wide, already pale. You saw it, he said. She nodded, breathless. It's not just a shipwreck, Luca. It's something deeper, older. The war didn't end in 1986. That treaty was only for men, Luca interrupted. Not for what lives beneath. Anna stared at him. You knew. He swallowed hard. Not everything. But my grandfather used to say, never listen to the hollow. It speaks in faces. I thought it was madness. Anna reached into her bag and tossed the journal onto his table. This proves it. They knew. The Dutch sailors. The Jenkins family. Maybe even our own ancestors. And now it's waking up again. Luca slowly picked up the journal. Then we have to finish what they couldn't. No, Anna said. We have to undo what they started. She looked down at her bag. Inside was the second ring, still whole. It pulsed once. A faint hum vibrated through the table. Luca looked at her. Then we bury it, like the message said. But Anna shook her head slowly. I don't think burying it will stop it anymore. Outside, the sea began to rise. The tide surged higher than usual. Gulls flew inland in a frenzy. And from the direction of the blue hollow, a new sound echoed across the waves. A horn, low, ancient, distant, and getting closer. Thank you for watching. Like, share and leave a comment for us. Check out our next video.